So good afternoon, everybody, once again. Now we start discussing the text of Khuswant Singh's short story, The Mulberry Tree. Last time, if you remember, we in fact started after the introduction to Khuswant Singh and what he really wanted to do. Then we started reading the text and we could cover some part of it. Today, what I'm going to do, I'm straightway moving into the text with you and sharing my screen so that you can see the text. Yes. So just raise your hand. Are you able to see the text? Yeah, just please raise your hand. Are you able to see the text? Okay, fine, fine. So then we are straightway moving into the textual discussion. Last time you remember that Vijay Lal had a miraculous save because on a very stormy kind of a evening, the mulberry tree, one of its branches fell and it could have crashed on the skull of Vijay Lal, smashing him along with his Fiat. So he had a very narrow escape, right? And mark it here, Vijay was not sure about God, nor about providence. He had never given these things much thought. Now he did. He started thinking, actually, before this miraculous save, Vijay Lal never used to think about the existence of God and all such things, right? You remember that he is a bachelor and he has his own way of living his life. Now, after that very miraculous kind of a save that day, he started thinking about the existence of some kind of a power, a supreme power. Half-forgotten stories of providential escape from certain death came to his mind. Some instances that he remembered reading about were extremely bizarre. One was of a plane flying from Dublin to London's Heathrow airport. It caught fire as it was approaching London. The pilot decided to make an emergency landing on an airstrip near a suburb called Mill Hill. As it descended, the plane hit the chimney of a house and broke into two. All the passengers and crew were killed, except a stewardess who was sitting at the tail end of the plane. So, there are certain things happen in our life. We cannot really logically explain why in that disastrous kind of an accident, almost everybody died. And why is it that suddenly one single person or just a few persons got saved? Now that in that plane crash, only one single survival, and that was a stewardess. Why was she singled out for survival and by whom? Some years later, there was the case of a man standing on the crowded platform of a London underground station. He fell on the tracks as the train was coming out of the tunnel. The train came to an abrupt halt, just as its wheels touched the man's body. The authorities decided to reward the train driver for his vigilance, but he was an honest man and refused to accept the reward because actually it was not really his doing. Okay. Whose was the unseen hand that had brought the train to a sudden halt in the nick of time? Why had the man's life been spared? Was it to allow him time to finish some task left unfinished? Or was it to compensate him for some good deed he had done? So that was really a mystery, and nobody really could give you a very definite answer. So in such kind of things do happen. They may not be very repeatedly they don't happen, but then they happen now and then. But the most mind-boggling was a case in Biz's own country. A man was traveling in a crowded bus along a narrow mountain road. He took a window seat in the last row. Since it was autumn and the weather had turned chilly, he wrapped himself in his shawl and soon fell asleep. He awoke a few hours later when he felt something slimy around one of his ankles. It was a small snake, which had found the man's leg a warm place to hibernate for the winter. The man screamed. The bus came to a screeching halt. The driver, conductor, and passengers rushed to the back of the bus, but shrank back at the sight of the snake curled around the man's ankle. No one had any idea what to do about it. The driver ran out of patience and suggested that the man slowly step out of the bus and sit on the parapet of the road with his leg exposed to the sun. গ্রামের মানুষরা অনেক সময় এই ধরনের অদ্ভুত অদ্ভুত কথা বলে। এই গাড়ির ড্রাইভার ওই যাত্রীকে বলল, ভাই তোমার ওই সাপটা তোমার পায়ে পাটাকে জড়িয়ে রয়েছে, তো এইভাবে তো আর অনন্তকাল ধরে গাড়ি দাঁড়িয়ে থাকতে পারে না, সবাইকে তো যেতে হবে নিজের জায়গায়। So do one thing, you rather come out of the bus and go and sit on the side of the road and expose yourself to the sun. It would induce the snake to leave him and find another dark, warm place, and he could then go on the bus following them. ভাই এরকম করো, পরের গাড়িটাতে তুমি চলে এসো, সাপটা ওই রোদে তোমাকে ছেড়ে কোনো ঠান্ডা জায়গায় চলে যাবে। The man did as he was told. The bus moved on. The snake behaved as had been predicted. It uncurled itself and slithered down the hillside. The man got on the following bus. A mile or so ahead, they noticed the parapet of the road knocked down. Another very strange thing happened. The man whose ankle was wrapped by the snake, he got down from the bus and he waited till the snake left him, and then he boarded the next bus. But then hardly had he crossed 1 mile, what he found? He found that one side of the parapet of the road was broken, and the bus in which earlier he was traveling was lying upside down in the khud at the bottom of the hill. Jano ওই লোকটার বাঁচার ছিল বলেই ওই সাপটা এসে তার পাটাকে জড়িয়েছিল, মানুষটা নেমে গেছিল রাস্তার ধারে, তারপরে বাকি সব যাত্রীদের নিয়ে ওই গাড়িটা মাইল খানেক দূরে যেতে না যেতে বিশাল বড় একটা অ্যাক্সিডেন্টে পড়লো এবং হয়তো সবাই মারা গেল। Vijay went over and over these incidents. He felt disoriented. Disoriented means he could not find a definite direction, right? He just started thinking and thinking, you see. He left the club as the evening came on. When he reached his colony, he parked his car just inside the gate and walked up to examine the damage the mulberry tree had suffered. The branch which had been wrenched out had left a nasty gash, exposing a hollow trunk. It was a very severe kind of an accident that could have really killed Vijay Lal. And what he saw after his return, he found that a big branch of mulberry tree was uprooted, was just broke down, and it left a big kind of a hollow. The fallen branch had been hacked into pieces to be used as firewood, and its leaves stripped off to feed goats. Lots of twigs were littered about the tarmac. No one had dared to park their cars under the tree. Naturally, everybody got scared. They could not understand if such a big branch can suddenly break down, well, it may happen again. So they just could not rely on the mulberry tree any further. Vijay also avoided leaving his car near it. He found another place close to his window. This time, the old mulberry tree had failed to demolish him or his car, but he had an uneasy feeling that it had turned malevolent. Malevolent মানে হচ্ছে বিরূপ হয়ে যাওয়া, কারোর ক্ষতি করতে চাওয়া। যেমন তোমরা শুনেছো হয়তো benevolent. Benevolent মানে যে উপকার করে, আর malevolent মানে যে ক্ষতি করে। So Bijay Lal started thinking that perhaps the mulberry tree had now a kind of an angry feeling against Bijay Lal and it wanted to kill him. As he entered his dark apartment and fumbled for the light switch, the strange thought came to him that the tree was in the last leg of its life and had meant to take him with it. It's a very strange kind of a feeling, you know. And we already read that Bijay Lal was somebody who was very keen observer of nature, and he used to find a kind of a sync, you know, with his life and what happens around him. You see, the chirping of the birds, the sunset, and all these things. By the next morning, everyone in the blocks of flats around the square was talking of Bijay's miraculous escape from what must certainly have been the end of his life. Naturally, it became a kind of a gossip subject. People started talking about it. They were used to seeing Annie occupy pride of place under the mulberry tree. You know, Annie is the name of the Fiat, and they used to see the Fiat always placed and parked under the mulberry tree. They now saw her parked alongside his apartment. Ki jani keno Bijay Lal ar jeno bhorosha korte parche na. So he could not rely on the mulberry tree anymore, and naturally he did not park his Fiat under the tree anymore, and he kept it alongside his apartment without a dent or even a scratch of a body. His neighbors came to congratulate him and get details of the story. With every narration, he made it sound more and more dramatic, right? Plenty of people, his neighbors and others, they showed interest and they came talking about what happened that day. And he used to narrate the whole incident. And as he kept on narrating, you know, he became more and more dramatic, sensational, describing each and every detail. It was the will of the Uparwala, some of his neighbors said, pointing heavenwards, right? Uparwala, you know, is God, Allah. Inscrutable are his ways. If the inscrutable means mysterious, nobody knows how God functions and God wills. If the good Lord is your protector, no one can touch a hair on your head. এটা একটা খুব প্রচলিত প্রবাদ, আমরা জানি, আমরা শুনেছি, এরকম একটা কথা বলা হয় যে রাখে কেষ্ট তো মারে কে, right? If God wants you to live, nobody can really harm you at all. A silver-haired great grandmother whom Bijay knew to be close to 100 years old added, no one can go before his time. No one can live a second beyond the span allotted to him. So different people, they started talking about God and his mercy, and whatever is in your destiny will happen, right? A faint smile came over Bijay's face at this, as he recalled the lines of a popular film song. Uparwala, very good, Niche wala, very bad, very bad. I mean, do not know exactly from where Khuswant Singh is referring to this. It was an absurd song, but what he felt was no less absurd. Till this morning, he would have described himself as an agnostic. Agnostic is a person who believes that nothing is known or can be known of the existence or nature of God. Okay. Well, so before this incident, Bijay Lal used to think that actually he knows nothing about how God is, whether there is a God and how God really operates and how God works. The morning papers had pictures of the havoc caused by the dust storm on their front pages. A huge neem tree had been uprooted in Chanakyapuri. So we come to know that actually Bijay Lal lives in Delhi, and Chanakyapuri is a place there. It lay diagonally across the road, and there was a Maruti under it, reduced to a crumpled sheet of metal. You understand? So just as the neem tree had virtually smashed the Maruti tree completely, the same thing could have happened to Bijay Lal's Fiat, and in fact, his own body. Fortunately, there had been no one in the car. A people stretched across another road in the Delhi University campus with 3 mangled cars under it. So 3 cars were parked there, and another peepal tree fell, with the result that all the 3 cars were completely smashed. 4 men and 2 women had been seriously injured and taken to hospital. A small child. So, these are different incidents and accidents and tragic things that happen, but somehow, Vijay Lal's life was saved. The more Vijay heard these tales, the more he was convinced he was someone special. And that gave Vijay Lal a feeling that there must be some definite purpose. Why, after all, his life was saved. নিশ্চয়ই কোনো না কোনো বিশেষ কোনো পরিকল্পনা উপরওয়ালার আছে, তা না হলে এরকম দুর্ঘটনা থেকে কোনো মতেই বিজয় লাল আজ বাঁচতে পারতো না। And he must not be a very common kind of a man, above the common run of humanity. He must be very special. He must have been sent on this earth to do something special. This added to his state of disorientation. I told you, disorientation is actually the condition of having lost one's sense of direction. কি করা উচিত, কোনটা ঠিক, ও যেন বুঝে উঠতে পারছে না, কেন এরকম তার সঙ্গে হলো, হঠাৎ করে যেন miraculously, যেন এটা একটা অদ্ভুত ভাবে যেন সে বেঁচে গেল, ঈশ্বরের আশীর্বাদ না এটা রহস্য না কি। From the block of flats in which Vijay lived, his story spread to the neighboring Khan market. Right? Khan market is quite close to, British Council and Connaught Place. The shops were agog money. Lots of people were talking about the same thing, with talk of his incredible luck. So it became a kind of a matter for lots of people to talk about it. Vijay was known to most of the shopkeepers. So now the story, very interestingly, Khuswant Singh now takes Vijay from his own apartment to the Khan market. Okay. Vijay was known to most of the shopkeepers as he was seen in the market almost every evening, peering into shop windows, flipping through magazines displayed on the footpath, going into one bookshop after another and browsing around the shelves, but rarely buying any books. They had become too expensive. And in any case, as a freelance newspaper columnist, he got more books to review than he could read. We know that Vijay Lal is actually a columnist. He uses to write reviews. And therefore, when he used to come to the Khan market, he hardly purchased any book. Though he used to enter the bookshops, flipping through the pages, and he was curious to know exactly which books are on the shelves and all. In the 2 antique shops means shops of the old items, he examined figurines of Hindu gods and goddesses, garnet means deep red precious stone necklaces and brass artifacts, asked their price but never bought anything. Very interesting. He used to inquire about the price. He used to flip through the books, right? He used to roam about from one shop to the other. But very strangely, he used to take interest in all those things, but he hardly purchased. In the music shops, he hung about listening to tapes being played at the request of buyers. At the greengrocers, he gaped awestruck at monstrous Korean apples. Bibhinno dokane o ghurto, pholer dokan, boyer dokan, বিভিন্ন রকমের অলংকারের দোকান, কিন্তু কিচ্ছু কিনতো না এবং অবাক হয়ে ভাবতো যে এত এত দামি দামি ফল, right? You have here a description of a number of fruits: Korean apples, small size, honey sweet Japanese watermelons, avocado pears from Bangalore, fresh broccoli, baby corn, asparagus. Asparagus is a tall plant of the lily family with fine leathery foliage, cultivated for its edible shoots, right? And artichokes is an European plant resembling a thistle, cultivated for its large flower heads. এইসব খুব দামি দামি বিদেশি ফল, অনেক কিছু জিনিস ওখানে সাজানো থাকতো। Their buyers were largely European and American diplomats and journalists who, in Vijay's opinion, drew unacceptably large salaries and spoiled the market rates. So, if you have a buyer, you can sell your things even at a pretty high price. So Bijay used to think that, well, all these American and foreigners and people who used to get plenty of money, they used to purchase all these things, and they used to, purchase them at very high rates. And that's the reason the common man could not purchase all these things. Bijay did not like the shop owners of Khan market. They were single-minded in their pursuit of money. এই লোকগুলোর আর কোনো কাজ নেই, এই দোকানদারগুলো শুধু একটাই কাজ করে. What he does, what they do, they only are interested in making money. There were other reasons why Bijay had no time for them. Most shop owners were Punjabi refugees from Pakistan. In one of his columns, he had described them as semi-literate parvenus. Parvenus is a person of ordinary origin who has gained wealth, influence, or celebrity. So, very ordinary common people born in an ordinary family and then gradually rose to quite a wealthy position and some name and fame. Now, many of the shopkeepers, according to Bijay Lal, are those very ordinarily born people, and now they have amassed money and they have got lots of influences who had converted their hatred for Pakistan to prejudice against all Muslims. একসময় এই লোকগুলো পাকিস্তানকে ঘৃণা করত, এখন এরা কি করে, এখানে সমস্ত মুসলমানদের প্রতি এদের রাগ আছে. They supported one or the other of the Hindu fundamentalist parties. তোমরা জানো fundamentalist মানে মৌলবাদী যারা extremist হয়. Between them, they had built a small temple behind the main market, which represented their religious beliefs. Ostensibly, outwardly, very clearly, apparently, it was a Krishna temple, Sri Gopal Mandir, named after the deity, and life-size statues of Krishna and his consort Radha were put up on the altar. সুতরাং একটা মন্দির তৈরি করেছে ওরা, এই খান মার্কেটের ব্যবসায়ীরা, কৃষ্ণের মন্দির, তার সঙ্গে রাধা আছে. But the temple also accommodated several other deities favored by the shopkeepers who were masters at hedging their bets. So there was the monkey god Hanuman as on one side of the entrance gate, and goddess Durga astride a lion on the other. Durga, মা দুর্গা রয়েছেন ওই সিংহের ওপরে, হনুমান রয়েছে একদিকে. Inside the left wall had the Sai Baba of Shirdi with stubble on its chin. Stubble হচ্ছে এক ধরনের ছোট্ট ছোট্ট stiff hairs, ছোট্ট ছোট্ট দাড়ি, যেটাকে আমরা খচখচে বলি, খোঁচা খোঁচা দাড়ি. One leg over the other and peering into space. তোমরা হয়তো নিশ্চয়ই দেখেছো শিরডির সাই বাবা, তার ছবিতে তিনি বেশিরভাগ সময় আকাশের দিকে তাকিয়ে থাকেন. The next to him, the Sai Baba Puttaparthi with his halo of fuzzy hair, very ello-mello, and pudgy hand, fat hand raised in blessing. There was also a black granite Shivlinga, and in the cubicle is a small space, next to it, idols of Shiva's consort Parvati and his elephant-headed son Ganesh. আমরা জানি যে হিন্দুদের এরকম অনেক দেব দেবতা আছে, এবং অনেক মন্দিরে যদিও মুখ্য মন্দির হয়তো কৃষ্ণের কিংবা কোনো এক দেবতার, তার সাথে সাথে কিন্তু অন্য বাকি দেব দেবতাকেও রাখা হয়. To every Hindu, his or her own god or goddess was the market motto. এবং এরা বিশ্বাস করে যে দেবদেবীকে যদি তুষ্ট রাখা যায়, সন্তুষ্ট রাখা যায়, if you can really somehow please your gods and goddesses, well, you can earn money. The only one on whom all were agreed as the supreme divinity was Lakshmi, the goddess of wealth. এবং লক্ষ্মী, বুঝতেই পারছো, she is supposed to be the goddess of money and wealth. So naturally, everybody used to worship Lakshmi. Bijay did not need the blessings of the many deities housed in the temple, just as he had no need for much of what was sold in Khan market. The only things he bought were a packet of cigarettes and a couple of pans. এইটুকুই শুধু বিজয় লাল এখান থেকে কিনতো, একটা প্যাকেট সিগারেটের আর গোটা দুয়েক পান. He put one paw in his mouth, kept another in his pocket to chew after dinner, lit a cigarette, launched upon his hour-long wanderings through the market. এবং অদ্ভুত লাগতো, মাসখানেক ঘন্টাখানেক ধরে ওই খান মার্কেটে বিভিন্ন দোকানে ও ঢুকতো বেরোতো অনেকটা, I can perhaps give you a comparison if I say that many of you perhaps have a habit of wandering through the mall. তোমরা হয়তো অনেকে মলে যাও, এসি টেসি রয়েছে, খুব সুন্দর সুন্দর করে সাজানো আছে, মলে মলে ঘুরছো, এই দোকানে ঢুকছো, ওই দোকানে ঢুকছো, এখানে একটু বসছো, একটু ঠান্ডা হাওয়া খাচ্ছো, একটু জল খেয়ে নিচ্ছো বিনা পয়সাতে, আর কিছু কিনছো টিনছো না। ওই রকমই হচ্ছে বিজয় লাল। Right. When anyone asked him why he made the rounds of Khan Market every evening, he answered, to see the Ronak. Ronak mane besh chak chamok, chay chak darun jolush. I like watching the happy crowds. And he would quote the Urdu poet Jock. I pass through the bazaar of the world. There is nothing I want to buy. So he used to have some shairi also. There were others who, like Vijay, came to Khan Market every evening for the ronak of multicolored lights, fancy cars, trendy people, trendy and fashionable people going from shop to shop. বিভিন্ন কারণে বিভিন্ন লোক মলে যায়, মানুষকে দেখার জন্য যায়, বেশ স্মার্ট স্মার্ট ইয়াং ছেলে মেয়ে আসে, তাদের দেখতে যায়, right? So might be for many reasons people used to visit, and Vijay recognized many of the regulars and even exchanged smiles with a few, but rarely spoke to them. There was a woman, তারপরে হঠাৎ বিজয় লালের চোখে পড়লো বিশেষ এক মহিলা, in particular, who attracted Vijay's attention and curiosity. She was not a regular, but came to the market 2 or 3 times a week, not to see the ronak, but to do her shopping. এই মেয়েটা একটু অন্য রকমের। এই মেয়েটা সপ্তাহে 2 দিন বা 3 দিন আসতো, and she used to come with a definite purpose because she wanted to purchase certain things. And she came in a chauffeur-driven car. Chauffeur is actually an American word for driver, right? So she used to come through by a car, and that car used to be driven by a well-dressed driver, which was parked at the end of the market facing the temple. She emerged from the car, always carrying a plastic handbag, crossed the road, and went past the temple to another market which had a liquor store. She returned shortly afterwards to dump the bag full of liquor bottles in her car. তাহলে ও বেশ কিছু মদ কিনে নিয়ে যেত। Then she took out another bag, this time of black canvas, কালো রঙের একটা কাপড়ের ব্যাগ বের করতো, strolled along the shops at a leisurely pace, যেন কোনো তাড়াহুড়ো নেই। She used to just walk, taking her time, stopping at every bookshop window, এবং মেয়েটাও কিন্তু বইয়ের দোকানের ওখানে একটু দাঁড়াতো। The only shop she entered was the bookshop, which was classier than the others and played soft Western classical music at all hours of the day. এবং বিশেষ করে যে দোকানটা, বইয়ের দোকানটা ওই মেয়েটি বেছে নিয়েছিল, সেটা একটু অন্য ধরনের। সেখানে সব সময় ওই পশ্চিম দেশীয় ক্লাসিক্যাল গান বাজতো। It warmed Vijay towards the woman. এবং Vijay Lal, we already read, was a very keen observer. ওর একটা অভ্যেসই হচ্ছে খুব ও closely watch করে সবকিছুকে। So he used to watch this woman also, and he liked the woman's habits, since this was his favorite bookshop too. Though he only ever bought his weekly magazines from it. ও বিশেষ কিছু কিনতো না, ওই একটু একটু কখনো হয়তো একটা সাপ্তাহিক যে ম্যাগাজিন সেগুলো কিনতো। He never entered the shop while the woman was inside. He loitered near the entrance till she emerged, usually half an hour later, and tailed her as she proceeded round the market to the greengrocers and the butchers. তারপর, well, the woman used to take half an hour. She spent half an hour inside the shop, and Vijay Lal used to just loiter. Loiter মানে ধীরে ধীরে ঘুরে বেড়ানো ওই দোকানের বাইরেটাতে। ও দোকানে কিন্তু ঢুকতো না যতক্ষণ না মেয়েটা বেরিয়ে আসছে। তারপর মেয়েটা চলে যেত কোথায়? She proceeded to around the market to the greengrocers and the butchers. তারপরে মেয়েটা ওই সবজি টবজি কেনা, মাংস কেনা ইত্যাদির জন্য মেয়েটা চলে যেত। When she returned to her car, she handed over the shopping bag to a driver, leaned against the bonnet and lit a cigarette. মেয়েটা একটু আধুনিক ধরনের, মানে আমরা সাধারণত এখনো আমরা খুব বেশি মেয়েদের সিগারেট খেতে দেখি না। এই মেয়েটার অভ্যেস ছিল বাজার করার পর সমস্ত ব্যাগগুলো গিয়ে ড্রাইভারকে দিয়ে দিত, তারপরে গাড়ির ভেতরে না ঢুকে গাড়ির বাইরে বনেটের ওখানে একটু গা ঘেঁষে দাঁড়িয়ে একটা সিগারেট ধরাতো। She surveyed the scene around her as she smoked, unbothered by the looks some of the people coming from the temple gave her. কে তার দিকে তাকাচ্ছে পাত্তা দিত না মেয়েটা। When she had finished a cigarette, she stamped the stub under her sandals, ওই যে সামনের দিকের অংশটা যেটা খাওয়া টানা যায় না, খাওয়া যায় না, সেই সামনের অংশটা ও তার চটির তলাতে পিষে দিত। The same bright red pair each time Vijay had noticed. এবং বিজয় খুব minutely used to observe everything of that woman, and that woman used to wear bright red pair of the sandals. Ordered the driver, chalo, chalo. Chalo is Hindi, so she used to speak in Hindi. 2 doors slammed shut and the Honda City. So Vijay also marked that the car is a Honda City, eased out of the parking lot and sped away. এটা একটা বিশেষ ঘটনা একদিন ঘটলো। Vijay could not make out why this woman attracted his attention more than other visitors to Khan Market. এবং বিজয়ের কাছে এটা একটা রহস্য, কেন হঠাৎ এই মেয়েটা তার দৃষ্টি আকর্ষণ করে, why he feels drawn to this woman, it's a mystery to him. It was true that he was immediately drawn towards Indian women who smoked and drank. It's a tick. Well, Vijay Lal used to have a fancy for these kind of women who used to smoke and drink. Why? Because to him, see, the answer is given. They were liberated women. কারণ মনে হতো বিজয় লালের যে এই মেয়েরা হচ্ছে খুব স্বাধীন চেতা, এরা কনজারভেটিভ নয়, রাইট? তারা বেশ স্বাধীন চেতা, they can take their own decisions, right? Possibly amenable to entering into frankly sexual relationships, no strings attached. এবং এটাও একটা কারণ হতে পারে বিজয় লালের এই ধরনের মেয়েদের প্রতি আকৃষ্ট হবার, because these women who used to smoke and drink, they must have been very forward, very opinionated. They have their own opinion, they have their own liberty, and therefore, well, they could even enter into a very frank kind of a relationship outside their own. So they might be married, they might not be married, doesn't matter. They maybe perhaps may have extramarital relation, so they would not really be very, very conservative. So that might be one of the reasons why Vijay Lal was attracted about women like this woman. Yet there were several other women he met at parties who also smoked and drank nonchalantly, indifferently, calmly, but left no impression on him. What was it about this woman? She had cropped black hair, thicker than any he had seen on another head, and while it was true that he liked short hair in women, that could not be the only reason for the attraction. Right? সুতরাং এই মেয়েটা যে কেন ওর ভালো লাগে, Vijay Lal just could not understand. Yes, she is quite attractive, no doubt, but then there are other women who are more attractive perhaps than this woman. Why did he follow her around then? And why was it that he looked forward to seeing her but did not want to get any closer to her and strike up a conversation? Okay, fine. So he feels drawn, he feels attracted, but very strangely, he marks her closely, he observes her closely, he follows her, but he doesn't come up and start speaking to her. It was as if he was afraid of ruining something. অদ্ভুত ধরনের লোক, 50 পেরিয়ে গেছে বিজয় লালের, এবং ওর যেন মনে হয় কথা বলতে গেলে কি জানি কিছু নষ্ট হয়ে যেতে পারে। Might be the woman might not respond as per her expectation, as per his expectation, who knows? So he would not take any risk. His infatuation was a mystery to him. Infatuation mane moho. Moho, right? It's not love. After all, he hardly knows her. And so there is no communication. It's not really falling in love at first sight. No, not that. It must be a kind of a liking. So his infatuation was a mystery to him. So was she. Yes, he couldn't understand, but then he always feels attracted. He tried to guess facts about her life. She usually wore a salwar kameez, but no bindi on her forehead, nor sindoor in the parting of her hair. খুব ক্লোজলি মার্ক করছে বিজয় লাল কোন জাতের হতে পারে, বিবাহিতা কি বিবাহিতা নয়, রাইট? এবং আমরা জানি, আমরা এইসব দিয়ে কি করার চেষ্টা করি, একটা মানুষ, বিশেষ করে একটা মহিলাকে জাজ করি যে এর সঙ্গে আমি কতদূর যেতে পারি। At first he thought she might be Muslim or Christian, till he noticed she had a Mangal Sutra around her neck. তারপর হঠাৎ একদিন দেখতে পেল যে গলাতে একটা মঙ্গল সূত্র ঝুলছে, মানে ডেফিনেটলি হিন্দু, and married. He could not make out where in India she came from. She could be Punjabi, Rajasthani, from UP or Maharashtra. He gave her names. এমনকি মনে মনে নাম দিতে শুরু করলো বিজয় লাল তাকে, উষা, আরতি, মেনকা. Some evenings, having his drinks, he thought of her and felt warm and mellow. পুরোটাই কল্পনা, মনের জগতে মেয়েটাকে নিয়ে ভাবতে ভাবতে অনেক সময় বিকেলে হঠাৎ করে বিজয় লাল বেশ মনে হতো ওর যেন কেউ সঙ্গ দিচ্ছে, যেন ওই মেয়েটি তার সাথেই আছে, and used to feel very warm. Mellow মানে soft, tender, but it never occurred to him to do anything more than follow her around quietly. কিন্তু আর কখনো কোনো কিছু মনে আসেনি যে এটা করতে হবে, ওটা করতে হবে, কথা বলতে হবে। A few evenings after the branch of the mulberry tree tried but failed to kill him, things changed. So after a few days, again another thing happened. Vijay saw the woman in the market a little earlier than her usual time. He followed her as usual, a few steps behind. She went inside the bookshop, and without thinking about it, he walked into the shop after her. So this was the first time that he entered along with that woman into the bookshop. তার আগে আমরা পড়েছি যে ও বাইরেই ঘোরাঘুরি করত, এই প্রথম সেদিন বিজয় লাল মেয়েটির সঙ্গে সঙ্গে ওই বইয়ের দোকানে ঢুকে পড়ল। He pretended to browse, picking out a book, reading the blurb, putting it back and pulling out another as he kept inching closer to her. He heard her ask the proprietress, একজন যিনি ছিলেন তিনি মালকিন মানে মহিলা ছিলেন যিনি বিক্রি করছিলেন, I'm looking for a suitable birthday gift for a boy of 15. হঠাৎ করে সে মেয়েটি বলল কি না, আমি একটা ভালো কোনো বই চাইছি একটা উপহার দেবার জন্য, বার্থডে গিফট, জন্মদিনের উপহার দিতে চাইছি একটা ভালো কিছু, কাকে? 15 বছরের একটা ছেলেকে। Now that's very strange who this boy may be. We have quite a selection for his age group, replied the young proprietress. The proprietress was a tall and attractive young girl who wore a diamond nose pin. She reminded Vijay of another girl he had known in his youth, whom he had wanted vaguely to spend the rest of his life with, but the romance had fizzled out at the prospect of marriage. বিজয় কোনদিন বিয়ে করেনি, হ্যাঁ একটা মেয়েকে পছন্দ হয়েছিল, হঠাৎ করে এই মালকিনকে দেখে মনে পড়ে গেল সেই মেয়ের কথা, রাইট? যার সম্বন্ধে বিজয় used to imagine that perhaps he has a kind of a crush for that woman, but just when the thought of marriage came, well, the relationship ended. What are his interests? She asked the woman. Stamps, photography, wildlife, shikar, computers? Naturally, you have to tell me the subject. What kind of a book I should give you? I'm not sure. He reads a bit of everything, perhaps good fiction about wildlife. What about Joy Adamson's Born Free, about her pet lioness Elsa? I think he read that a couple of years back, Vijay heard himself say. Why not Kipling's Jungle Book? হঠাৎ করে বিজয় বলে বলছিল, আচ্ছা আপনি বরং কিপলিং এর জঙ্গল বুক যদি নেন, it has all kinds of animals, Sher Khan, the tiger, Balu, the bear, and there is Mowgli, the wolf boy. তোমরা নিশ্চয়ই মোগলির গল্পটা পড়েছো সবাই? Yes, all of you have read that, Mowgli? Yeah. So the woman turned towards him. সুতরাং এই প্রথম কথা বলছে বিজয়লাল ওই মেয়েটির সঙ্গে, ইনডাইরেক্টলি, প্রত্যক্ষভাবে না হলেও হঠাৎ যেন ওর ব্যাপারে he started taking interest. You must be kidding. That is kid stuff. He read it when he learned to read English. To soften the snub, she beamed a smile at him. হ্যাঁ, ছেলে মানুষই করবেন না তো, ও যখন বাচ্চা ছিল তখন এসব পড়েছে। তারপরেই মেয়েটার মনে হলো যে মনে হয় একটু খারাপ লাগবে হয়তো এইভাবে আমি উত্তর দিলাম। So the girl smiled. Vijay persisted. What about Jim Corbett's books on his encounters with man-eating tigers and leopards? He has read all of Corbett's books, replied the woman. Vijay did not give up. He was feeling a little reckless. I bet he hasn't read Gerald Durrell's My Family and Other Animals. তারপর বলল, বিজয়লাল বলল, নিশ্চয়ই ও পড়েনি ডারেলস এর লেখা My Family and Other Animals. সঙ্গে সঙ্গে ওই মেয়েটাও বলে উঠলো, it has long been one of our best sellers, ma'am. I'm sure the young man will enjoy it as well. So it was Durrell's book that won the evening. সুতরাং ডারেলেরই সেই নামি বই যেটা বিজয়লাল প্রস্তাব করলো, সেটাই ফাইনালি ওই মেয়েটা কিনে নিল। তাহলে বোঝো ধীরে ধীরে কেমন করে একটা যোগসূত্র, কাইন্ড অফ বন্ডিং তৈরি হচ্ছে। একটা অপরিচিতা মেয়ে, কিচ্ছু জানে না একে অন্যকে, বিজয়লালের হঠাৎ ওকে ভালো লাগছে, কেন ভালো লাগছে জানে না, হয়তো সে স্বাধীন চেতা, রাইট? মাইট বি বিকজ অফ হার লুকস, might be anything, it's very difficult to say. It might be in the subconscious mind. He wanted to have some relationship with a woman. For some reason it could not materialize. হঠাৎ করে ওই যে মালবেরি ট্রির ওই গাছের ডালটা ওর উপরে পড়ে গিয়ে ওকে মেরে দেয়নি, ও বেঁচে গেছে, এই ব্যাপারটা হঠাৎ বিজয়লালকে যেন বোঝাচ্ছে যে তুমি আবার নতুন করে চিন্তা ভাবনা করতে পারো, রাইট? এরকম কিছু একটা নতুন কিছু ভাবতে পারো, আবার কিছু এগোতে পারো, রাইট? Both the women thanked Vijay for suggesting it. He felt strangely elated. The woman paid for the book, and as she was leaving, turned to Vijay and said, "Thanks for everything. Good night." My pleasure. এরপরে লক্ষ্য করো খুশবন্ত সিং কি বলছেন, he beamed like a school boy. That's very interesting. 50 বছরের একটা মানুষ, একটা 30-32 বছরের এই মহিলা, হয়তো সেই মহিলা, তিনি একটা 15 বছরের ছেলেকে একটা জন্মের উপহার দেবেন, একটা বই, সেই বই নেবাতে বিজয়লালের প্রস্তাব সে মেনে নিয়েছে, ওই বইটাই কিনেছে, মেয়েটা ধন্যবাদ বলেছে, তাতেই পুলকিত হয়ে উঠেছে বিজয়লাল। তার ভেতরে সেই একটা কিশোরের মতো উৎফুল্ল ভাব, রাইট? On his second drink later that evening, Vijay found himself thinking of the woman and felt restless, right? So the attraction grew more and more. The mellow, quiet feeling of the past had vanished. আগে প্রথম প্রথম মেয়েটার কথা ভাবলে একটা নরম নরম ভাব আসতো, ভালো লাগা শুধু। Had it been a mistake to talk to her? He knew that he could not follow her around silently as used to. He had crossed an invisible line. খুব interesting part. That's the reason I've highlighted it. Just Khuswant Singh যেটা এখানে আমাদের বোঝাচ্ছেন, it's very important for all of you to mark how in the subconscious, certain things keep on happening and then they start surfacing on the conscious level. He had crossed an invisible line. অজান্তে কখন এমন একটা লক্ষ্মণ রেখা, তোমরা নিশ্চয়ই জানো লক্ষ্মণ রেখা কাকে বলে, আমরা রামায়ণে পড়েছি যে যখন ওই হরিণকে, সোনার হরিণকে ধরতে গেছে রাম আর লক্ষণ, তখন লক্ষণ কি করেছে? লক্ষণ drew a line just outside the cottage and asked Sita not to cross over it because that's the protection. And in fact, Ravan could steal Sita only after Sita crossed that Lakshman Rekha to give some alms to that Ravan in disguise. You know that. এবার এই যে কথা বলেছে, এতক্ষণ কথা বলেনি, এতক্ষণ শুধু বাইরে বাইরে থেকে দেখেছে, now suddenly Vijay Lal became a bit more adventurous. Suddenly he thought that he could do something with the woman, he could go forward. He was aware that she must be at least 20, perhaps 25 years younger than him. Vijay Lal started thinking about the age difference. He is 50 plus. The woman must be at least 20, 25 years younger. That means around 30, might be around 28, 30, something like that. So, I mean, you just can understand that a man of 50 showing interest for a woman who is almost half of her age, half of his age, and he could be snubbed badly. ভয়ের ব্যাপার আছে, রাইট? ওকে পুড়িয়ে দিতে পারে মেয়েটা, বলতে পারে, সাহস হয় কি করে আপনার আমার পেছন পেছনে ঘোরার, রাইট? But life was too short not to take chances. The thought of taking chances excited him. AJ, the thought of taking chances excited him. ভালো করে বোঝো। So, because he was miraculously saved, because he started thinking that he is not just an ordinary person, perhaps he is chosen to do something. Well, who knows? He interpreted that perhaps he still can have some romance in his life. Vijay ran into her again 3 days later. He was not sure if she recognized him. He took the liberty of greeting her and asked, "So how did you like Durrell?" আবার একটা সুযোগ খুঁজে ওর সঙ্গে কথা বলা। She gave him a broad smile and replied, "Hi there. Enjoyed it hugely, both of us. Thanks for suggesting it." "You have lived around here?" he asked. "I see you almost every other evening." "Not far. I like to do my shopping here. I can get everything I want, and it's so cheerful. And you?" "I live in the block of flats across the road. A poky little flat crammed with books." Poky মানে একটা ওয়ার্থলেস, একটা প্রচন্ড ছোট্ট একটা ফ্ল্যাট, অনেক বইয়ে ওতে ঢোকানো আছে। I have no other hobbies. I'm a boring man. I'll be honored if you will drop by some evening for a cup of chai or whatever. You know, this is again the typical Delhi style of speaking English. You know, the Delhi people, what they do when they speak English, they use one or two words of Hindi here and there. So a man who writes a column, right, a journalist, he could have easily said tea, but no, he would say for a cup of chai. See? That's a very unique kind of a style of Delhi people speaking in English. "Thanks, but not today," she replied brusquely, bluntly. "I may take you up on your invitation some other time. Nice meeting you." She extended her hand to bid him farewell. So that woman had no such reservation, right? She shook hands with Vijay. It was the first time he touched her. Mark that. Now, sometimes you touch somebody, but you don't notice it. Why? Because that's very common and casual kind of a thing. But Vijay is taking note of everything. ওর সঙ্গে হাত মেলানোটা নিতান্ত ফর্মাল একটা হাত মেলানো নয়। He liked the feel of her soft, warm hand. He wanted to hold it for longer, but she did not encourage him. ও পারলে ওই মেয়েটার হাতটা ছাড়তই না, এমন ইচ্ছে করছিল ওর। That was, see, a very peculiar kind of way that Vijay interpreted the whole thing, and especially that miraculous save that he had. Another surprise awaited Vijay in his pursuit of his newfound passion. One afternoon, he was loitering in the masjid nursery looking at plants for sale. There were 3 such nurseries close to his apartment. Although he bought nothing as he had not enough space in his flat for plants, he liked looking at them, finding out their names and prices. So Bijay had, many different kind of interests. He also liked plants, so he used to roam about near the nursery. Masjid Nursery, so named because it was next to a mosque, had the largest display of flowers and cacti. Cactus, plural hoche cacti. While he was going around the nursery, he spotted the woman come to the mosque. And you may call it a coincidence, right? There also suddenly he found the same woman. And the same woman, she came and she entered the mosque. She came on foot. There was no sign of a car. She took her sandals off at the entrance and went in. Right? Bijay had assumed that she was Hindu. What was she doing in a mosque? Perhaps he was wrong, but then Muslim women did not come to pray in mosques. Perhaps her son was at the madrasa reading the Quran and she had come to pick him up. Bijay hung around in the nursery for over half an hour. He heard the call for the Maghrib prayer when men trooped in, taking their shoes inside with them, and 15 minutes later streamed out. Ki adbhut. মেয়েটা ভেতরে ঢুকেছে তো ঢুকেছে আর বেরিয়েই আসছে না, কত লোক আসছে মসজিদে ঢুকছে প্রার্থনা করার জন্য, মিনিট 15 পর বেরিয়ে আসছে। Right. Bijay could not hold his curiosity much longer. He went up to the entrance of the mosque. Only the lady's bright red sandals lay close to the threshold. He peered in. There was a lone man sitting close to the pulpit, reciting from the Quran. To his right was another small door. Possibly she had entered from the main door and left by the side door. Forgetting about her sandals, Bijay paused for a few moments. Then, very strange thing he did, picked up the sandals and brought them home. Very strange fits of passion, you can say. Mark. He's doing all weird kind of things. And he is trying to somehow remain in touch with the woman. And he did not really plan. All on a sudden, the idea came to him that he could take the sandals, and he just did not take the sandals, but he brought them home. So that near future, there would be a possibility for him to talk to the woman, ask her to come to her home. It was a curious, inexplicable sense of triumph, and he had a feeling of victory. Oh, I have won. Like a scientist making a breakthrough in his research for the lodestone by which base metal could be turned into gold. And he was so happy. He thought that, oh, he did something wonderful. It would go a long way in perhaps having some kind of relationship with the woman. He now had an excuse to invite her, mark that. He now had an excuse to invite her to his flat and get to know her name, to find out who she was and what she did. He put the sandals in a gap in one of his bookshelves, next to the leather-bound volumes of Inferno. That's very interesting. Inferno is symbolically something pretty close to hell. See, Don Quixote and Rubaiyat, that were his prized possessions. খুব নামকরা কিছু বই যেগুলোকে ও খুব যত্ন করে রাখতো, তারই পাশে জায়গা পেল ওই মেয়েটার পায়ের জুতো. Because he also gives them almost equal value. Strange things were happening to Bijay Lal. Bijay যেটা করছে সেটা একটা কিশোর করে, right? An adolescent does all this. প্রথম একটা ছেলে একটা মেয়ের সঙ্গে যখন পরিচয় হয়, তখন এই ধরনের একটা অনুভূতি হয়, ওই ধরনের কাজ করে তারা। কি করে একটু কথা বলা যায়, কি করে একটু ছোঁয়া যায়, কি করে একটু ভাবা যায়, those kind of things, and they were all happening with Bijay Lal, a man of 50 plus. The next 3 evenings, he went to the market and spent longer than usual going around the shops. The Ronak of Khan market was no longer enough. এখন আর শুধু ওই খান মার্কেটে জৌলুস তাকে আকৃষ্ট করে না. He waited, but there was no sign of her. He bought 2 packets of cigarettes and a couple of pans. He wandered agitatedly for some time. He returned home defeated. He was luckier on the 4th day. Returning from the bookshop with copies of Outlook and India Today, we already read that he used to purchase some weekly magazines, and there were 2 magazines he purchased. He saw her coming towards him with a bag full of groceries. She was barefoot, very strange. A woman who comes with a chauffeur in a car, purchases so many things, is walking barefoot with no sandal, no shoe. Vijay stopped right in front of her and greeted her. Good evening. Hi there, she replied with a distant smile. What's happened to your red sandals? He asked. She looked down at her bare feet, as if noticing them for the first time, and replied, I've lost them. How did you know they were red? খুব স্বাভাবিক. এরকম একটা মানুষ হঠাৎ যদি বলে আপনার লাল জুতোগুলো গেল কোথায়? Naturally, the question that comes to your mind is, how do you know that I used to wear red sandals? I'm a very observant man. You must not walk barefoot on those dirty roads and pavements. You might step on a sharp pebble or piece of glass. See the concern. He is getting concerned for the woman. Surely you must have other footwear at home. নিশ্চয়ই বাড়িতে তো আরো অন্য জুতো টুতো আছে. No, maybe I should buy a new pair. কি অদ্ভুত, মেয়েটা এত কিছু কেনে, গাড়িতে আসে, আর কোনো জুতো নেই. হ্যাঁ ঠিক আছে, আমি আরেকটা হয়তো নতুন কিছু কিনবো. You can save your money. I have your sandals in my flat. Right, that was actually the whole plan. Vijay Lal did not want really to take the sandals, right? So sandals only, he thought that sandals would give him an opportunity to invite the woman to his flat. She looked him full in the face, visibly alarmed. In your flat? Where did you find them? How did you know they were mine? I am observant and I am also a good spy, he replied. I happened to be in the masjid nursery when I saw you take off your sandals and go into the mosque. You probably went out by the side door forgetting about them. I picked them up and took them home. I have taken good care of them. Don't you want them back? Of course I do, she replied. তা তো বটে, আমি নেব তো বটে, ওগুলো আমার চাই. Her brow gathered in a frown. I'll send my driver to pick them up. যেটা খুব স্বাভাবিক. একজন যুবতী মেয়ে, সে তো আর বলবে না যে আমি নিচে যাব. খুব স্বাভাবিক, সে বলেছে আমি আমার ড্রাইভারকে পাঠিয়ে দিচ্ছি, আপনি দিয়ে দিন. No, he said firmly. I will return your sandals only to you and no one else. I've told you. I live just across the road. বেশি দূরে না, এই কাছেই থাকি আমি. আমি কিন্তু অন্য কাউকে জুতো দেব না. So you clearly understand that the whole purpose of Vijay Lal asking to return, I mean wanting to return the sandals, is to get the woman, take the woman to his flat. Besides, you might forget to send a driver. I can tell that you are very absent-minded. He half expected to be told to buzz off. Right? Well, he was a bit apprehensive. ওর একটু মনে এরকম এটা কিন্তু কিন্তু ভাব রয়েছে, হয়তো মেয়েটা বলবে কি, থাক দরকার নেই, তাহলে আপনাকে জুতো দিতে হবে না, আমি আপনার বাড়ি যাব, কেন যাব আমি বাড়ি? But she seemed to like what she heard and smiled. That I am. ওই যে বলেছে অ্যাবসেন্ট মাইন্ডেড, আপনি একটু অ্যাবসেন্ট মাইন্ডেড, হয়তো ভুলেই যাবেন ড্রাইভারকে পাঠাতে. হ্যাঁ তা তো বটেই. A little off my rocker, as they say, eccentric and moody. হ্যাঁ আমি একটু খামখেয়ালি, হ্যাঁ একটু পাগলাটে পাগলাটে. Sounds charming. So do I have the pleasure of your company? She laughed and nodded her head. He accompanied her to her car. She asked the driver to turn around and take her and the Sahib to the block of flats across the road. They had no conversation in the car as Vijay kept instructing the driver where to turn to park the car. Wait for a few minutes, she told the driver as they stepped out. Bijay opened the door of his flat and ushered her in. Ushered মানে তাকে সঙ্গে করে নিয়ে ঢুকে পড়লো বিজয় লাল তার ফ্ল্যাটে। She looked around the room. Books, books, books. You could not have read them all. বাবারে কত বই! আপনি নিশ্চয়ই সবগুলো পড়ে ফেলেননি। No, it will take more than a lifetime to read all of them. I just like surrounding myself with books. Do be seated. It's a very polite way to ask somebody to sit down. He said, pointing to the sofa, I will get your sandals. আমি আপনার চটিগুলো নিয়ে আসছি। She sat down. She looked sheepishly at her dirty feet resting on the expensive Bukhara carpet. বেশ দামি বুখারা কার্পেট বিছানো আছে ফ্লোরের উপরে, আর তার উপরে নোংরা পা দিয়ে হেঁটে এসেছে মেয়েটা। ওর একটু কেমন যেন একটু অস্বস্তি লাগছে। I'm afraid I'll dirty your qaleen. Qaleen is carpet, you know, she said. Don't you worry about that. It has suffered much worse, he assured her. Stay right where you are. I'll be back in a minute. Bijay came back not with the shoes, but a basin of water and a towel thrown over his shoulder. Strange. He did not just simply come with the sandals and return them. Instead, what he did, he brought a basin of water. Gamla, এক গামলা জল এনেছে আর একটা টাওয়েল এনেছে তার গামছা ওই কাঁধের উপরে। What is this for? You will find out, he replied. See what a mess your feet are, black with gravel and dust. Put them in the basin, I'll clean them. কি অদ্ভুত ব্যাপার। কি বলছে? বলছে তুমি বরং একটা কাজ করো, তুমি না আপনি যাই হোক, আপনি বরং একটা কাজ করুন, দেখুন আপনার পাগুলো কেমন কালো কালো হয়ে গেছে, নোংরা ধুলোতে ভরে গেছে, আপনি পাগুলো ওই গামলাতে ডোবান, আমি ওটাকে পরিষ্কার করে দেবো। Strange. And as if she is the goddess. A look of alarm returned to her face, but she submitted tamely and put her feet in the basin. She was just a bit very shaken up what the plan of this man is, but then somehow she allowed. The water was warm. He pulled a mudha মানে ওই বসার একটা ছোট্ট জায়গা, বাঁশ দিয়ে বা বেত দিয়ে তৈরি হয়, and sat in front of her. Relax, he said gently. She leaned back, rested her head on the blue sofa and shut her eyes. He soaked her feet and sponged them. He took his own time doing this. ধীরে সুস্থে পাটাকে পরিষ্কার করে ধীরে 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 গামছা দিয়ে মুছে, then moving the basin out of his way, he put her feet on his knees. পা দুটোকে তার হাঁটুর উপরে রেখে by turns and rubbed them with a towel, as if either she is just a child, a woman, a daughter, right? She just is a daughter to me. You are just a daughter to me, or a child to me, and I'm just cleaning everything that you cannot perhaps clean. Or, well, you do this kind of a thing to a goddess, a deity. দেবীর ক্ষেত্রে আমরা এরকম করি। কিন্তু তারপরেই ওর কয়েকটা মন্তব্য একটু অন্য ধরনের। Lovely arches, he said, kneading her feet with his thumbs. You may open your eyes. See how clean and soft they look. And then he commented about the beauty of the feet. She opened her eyes. She saw the basin full of muddy black water and her feet looking fresh and clean. The thin gold chain around her right ankle was gleaming after the wash. So was the silver ring she wore on one of her toes. Shona ache, rupo ache. So it seems that she is from a very well-off family. You seem to be a nice gentleman. But why are you doing all this for me? আপনাকে দেখে বেশ ভালো ভদ্র মনে হচ্ছে, কিন্তু আপনি এগুলো কেন করছেন আমার জন্য? Why are you doing this? What's the purpose? She asked. I don't even know your name. Come on, this is very strange. I don't even know you, who you are, your name, and you have just asked me to come to your flat, and you are now washing my feet the way, well, I just can't understand. All in good time, he replied with a grin. Yes, you would know my name. It will just take some time. একটু হেসে বিজয় লাল জবাব দিল। He picked up the basin of dirty water and soap suds and took it to his bathroom, poured down its contents in the loo, and pulled the flush. He washed his hands, came back with the red sandals. Once again, he sat in the mura, facing her, and slipped the sandals on her feet. Don't go about leaving them at the doorsteps of mosques again. They may never come back. Even I might not return them the next time, since they have brought me good luck. Now, very strange. If you do the same thing next time, well, I might steal them and would not return them to you, because they have brought me good luck, because they are something that, well, I think I am fortunate now. Something is happening in my life. What do you mean? What luck have they brought you? See, he said, they brought me good luck. Now he says, made you visit my pokey den. Apni eshechen amar ei eta ki dhoroner baje nongra ekta flater moddhe. I hope not for the first time or the last. Nishchoi prothombar ebong etai sheshbar hobe na. She blushed. Lajuk lajuk chehara kore meti hashlo and brushed the hair off her forehead. I don't even know your name, she said, looking straight at him. Bijay. And yours? Karuna, meaning compassion. A lovely name, but Karuna what? O jante chaiche podobi, surname. Karuna, that's all, she said curtly. Mark that. She is purposely hiding which caste or class or religion she belongs to. I only ask because I'm curious. You have a Hindu name. So what were you doing in a mosque? Ki adbhut. Jante chaiche apni kon jate, kon dharmer. Nosy, aren't we? Anyway, আমরা বড্ড বেশি অন্যের ব্যাপারে নাক গলাই. Nosy মানে we interfere too much in others' affairs, aren't we? Anyway, if it is so important for you to know, I went because I had never seen the inside of a mosque. She rose abruptly. She did not answer whether she is a Muslim or a Hindu or a what. She said, well, I thought that I should know what is there in a mosque. She rose abruptly. Abruptly means suddenly. I must go home now. Thanks for everything. I still don't know why you took all the trouble, though. He walked her to the door. He hoped to linger there while to hold her back, but she was in no mood to oblige. Bye, she said, without turning back. As she hurried away, he heard a car start up and go out of his block of apartments. So there I have yes, so we have completed the discussion today, right? And now you can ask me questions if you want. I have unmuted you. You can unmute and talk to me. Is there any question to ask? Is there any question to ask?
No, sir.
Could you understand the whole? Actually, the story is very interesting if you can very keenly observe the different stages in the chain that's happening in the mind of Bijay Lal. Since the time that he was saved miraculously, and the big branch of the mulberry tree not crushing him to death, he suddenly started believing that there was a special purpose why he was saved, right? And he is not supposed to be just a person who will die, without doing anything interesting. And suddenly he became courageous. And what he started doing is he started taking interest in a woman. And very strangely, a woman of almost 20-25 years younger than him, right? And feeling all more and more drawn towards the woman. Gradually, the attraction towards a woman grew, right? So if you don't have any question, we will stop there. And I would require one more class to end the discussion. Any question, anybody? Could you understand everything that we discussed today?
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine then. So bye-bye then. I end it here. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.